Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Friday, March 19th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Minnesota game is in 167 days, the game against Michigan in 253 days. Ohio State will tip off its 2021 NCAA tournament run later today against Oral Roberts. That game starts today at 3 o'clock on CBS. Today is also the start of spring football practice for the Buckeyes, so we're going to be talking a little football this morning. My guest today is Danny Vanatsky. He just spent the last 3 seasons as a walk-on quarterback for the Buckeyes before announcing that he was hanging up his cleats earlier this week. He's also the owner of one of the great mustaches in Ohio State football history. Danny, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the warm welcome.
It's not quite as thick as lustrous as it was in the middle of last season, but those of you watching on YouTube, that'll be the thumbnail. I've got a good picture of Danny sitting on the bench last year with his fantastic Globo Gym mustache, so you can check that out there. Coming out of high school, you were a second-team All-State quarterback. Mm-hmm. You got a preferred walk-on offer to Ohio State. So what was it that made Ohio State the place that you decided you wanted to play your college ball?
Right. So towards the end of my senior year, March, February, when everybody's, signed pretty much, got figured out where they're going. I was still up in the air whether I wanted to pick a PW at Marshall was one of my offers. And then whether I wanted to play D2, D3, NAIA, that kind of thing. And nothing really caught my eye. I couldn't really see myself somewhere, whether I was going to be the guy or not. And then Ohio State came through like in April, when Joe Burrow announced that he was going to transfer. And so that opened up a spot in the quarterback room. And, at the time it was like, oh yeah, it's a no brainer. It's Ohio State. But like, I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but it's crazy how things work out in life. And, it was perfect timing, got myself prepared and came in that summer, like 3 months later.
I mean, how hard can it be to fill Joe Burrow's shoes, right? I mean, that guy barely played at Ohio State. How good can he possibly be?
And then to make it worse, they gave me his old number too. Perfect. Yeah.
I think a lot of fans maybe only kind of have a vague idea, like who walk-ons are, like what they actually do in the program, like why are they important? Why are they here? Can you explain a little bit about like what you were actually doing during a typical week, either in camp or even during practices during the season?
Yeah. So I'll start off by saying this. I'll defend walk-ons till the day I die because a lot of people do not understand how important they are to programs. Most of them, a lot of us play, and contribute on Saturdays. And the only difference is that scholarship guys are getting their school paid for. We do everything that they do. At Ohio State, I know a lot of places differ, but at Ohio State, the standard is the same for walk-ons and scholarship guys. So during the week, it really depends. Since I was a quarterback and only one of us can play at once, I was a scout team guy and I'd run the scout offense for 2 years. And that's really fun. I mean, that was my purpose. I embraced that, had a lot of fun with it. But it really differs. We have guys like Mitch Rossi, who's actually like, he's a contributing member on offense, every special team, Xavier Johnson, Cade Kaczorski, guys like this. So a lot during the season, if we have injuries or obviously with COVID reasons, walk-ons are like always there, very, very reliable and you can stick them in there and get the job done. So it really just depends on your position. Receiver room is very rotating. So the guys get a lot of reps. And like I said, at Ohio State, the coaches don't care if you're a walk-on or scholarship, they're going to play the best guy. And so a lot of times, like you'll look out there and be like, I don't even know who this guy is, but it's like, well, he's on the field for a reason. He's a good football player. But so yeah, definitely position by position, it differs. But whether it's scout team or whether it's, giving a guy a breather in practice or whether it's you're a starter, you're rotating in. The walk-on role definitely varies position by position and year by year, I'd say. As walk-ons get older, more respect and more like any player, maturity and coaches trust them more. Give them more leeway for sure.
You mentioned the standard being the same for walk-ons as for scholarship players. Mm-hmm. There was a question I asked folks on our board, like, hey, do you have any questions like about the walk-on experience? And someone said, like, so is this, during mat drills or during winter workouts, like, did they kind of give the walk-ons like a little extra grace? Is it like, yeah, I mean, you don't have to run quite as many or whatever? It sounds like the answer is that no, Coach Mick makes everyone exactly as miserable as everyone else.
Yes, 100%. But that's the beauty of being a walk-on too, is the weight room and Coach Mick and our other strength coaches is that the weight room is the equalizer. You don't see you don't see stars, you don't see talent necessarily. Genetics. Obviously, there's some freaks, but Coach Mick is really good in the weight room. If you work hard, then everybody's the same in his eyes. And so that for walk-ons, I mean, that's our place where it's weights, it's speed, like it's grit, it's a lot of things that can't be defined by stars or how recruited you were, talent, and obviously all those guys are very talented too. But yeah, the weight room, there was no slack given to walk-ons.
Well, earlier you mentioned running the practice squad during practices. Can you just explain a little bit about like what the practice squad actually is, like what you're actually doing there? And did you have like that one shining moment where you just threw just an absolute dime over Jeff Okuda, or you juke Chase Young, and it's like, this is the greatest moment of my entire life?
Yeah, so I could go on and on about scout team experiences, but basically the essential premise of a scout team is you have guys who are not going to be playing on Saturdays, whether it's scholarship guys who aren't going to be playing, young guys, or walk-ons who aren't going to be playing on Saturday, or even upperclassmen aren't going to be playing on Saturday. And so we are going against, since I'm on the offensive side of the ball, we're going against the starting defense and the second team defense. And so that whole week we're watching the opponent. Let's say we're playing Wisconsin. We're watching Wisconsin's offense in our meetings, in our scout team meetings, and giving the best look we can. So best example I can give is, if we're playing Team Up North, let's see, 2 years ago when they had Shea Patterson at quarterback, he wore a glove, and the entire week I had to wear a glove. And, we mimic their cadence, we mimic their claps, everything. We mimic their checks. And obviously it's not going to be that way everywhere. Ohio State is the cream of the crop. But it's really intense. They expect you to watch film of the opposing offense to give the best look you can. And then in terms of favorite scout moment had to happen, it must have been Clemson week this year, bowl practice. And we ran a double reverse pass and I caught a touchdown. And I remember it was like the most elated moment of my life. It was, I mean, obviously probably my only catch I had at Ohio State. And it was like a 40-yard touchdown. We're going nuts. And there's nothing better than scoring a touchdown on scout team, the defensive coaches, get on the guys. And yeah, that was Sam Wiglis threw me the pass. Shout out to Sam. And yeah, I remember that celebration was awesome. But there are moments like that, where it's like, yeah, definitely bring a smile to my face looking back on it.
You guys don't, I mean, there's certain perks that will come with being a walk-on, and you'll get to dress for home games. I think people maybe don't necessarily understand that the travel squad, you don't necessarily get to travel for all the road games.
Right.
So how many, the travel squad for road games, 75, I think, something like that. And you get 85 scholarship guys plus the walk-ons, and you've only got 75 guys going to the road game. So how many games did you actually get to travel for? And then when you didn't travel, like how hard is it to just be like watching on TV? Like, I really wish I could be there and, helping and listening on the headsets or like whatever. But yeah, how hard is that to not be there then?
Oh man, that's tough. Especially like memory that I have instantly is the Purdue game, 2018. That was a night game. I mean, I remember watching it on TV, just being miserable. And then Penn State too, that year we had the really close game. Those kind of games, you're like, man, I want to be on the sidelines. Like I feel like I can help in any way. But in terms of traveling, I think I ended up traveling like 5 games in my career. And then, but I'd say there was probably 5 walk-ons who consistently traveled. And a lot of those guys are special team starters. Our travel roster is strictly guys who are going to see the field, on Saturday, who we need. So that leaves out a lot of the freshmen, red shirts, injured guys, obviously, things like that. So it varies week by week on who we need. But I would say consistently there's probably 5 or 6 walk-ons who are traveling. And then obviously as a quarterback, like it's tough to say like we need another quarterback, when we have a guy as tough as Justin, going out there. But yeah, so that's generally how it works.
But you got to go see some postseason games. Like
Correct.
you got to go be on the sidelines at the Rose Bowl. And I mean, like that, I mean, that had to be pretty cool.
Yeah. I was able to go to every bowl game, and that was awesome. The bowl experience itself is really cool. And that's something that's, underrated at the college level or underappreciated, is that it gives kids like me, kids who otherwise would never see these parts of the country, like LA, Malibu, places like this, and for free, free travel, different. And I think a lot of us can get hung up in, like we got the bowl game, like you got to focus. Like for a lot of schools, like this is like the pinnacle of theirs. Obviously for Ohio State, the pinnacle is a national title, but for a lot of them, like the bowl experience itself, getting there, I feel like I didn't appreciate it as much as I should have. And I feel like that's something that's really unique to college football, and we have tremendous bowl games.
You came in the spring of 2018 or the summer of 2018.
Yeah.
So that means you got to actually know Ryan Day when he was just a position coach. He was, he was not like all caps Ryan Day, head coach of Ohio State. He was just, hey, here's the new guy who's coaching the quarterback. So I don't know if anyone looked at him in June of 2018 and thought like, yeah, this dude's gonna be the head coach in 6 months. But I know I didn't. I was not thinking that was necessarily where that was going. But what were your initial impressions of him, and like at what point was it like, oh yeah, this guy might be going some places?
Yeah. So I guess my initial impressions would be that I didn't know any better. I thought that all coaches were this perfect and great at their job. I'm saying from a quarterback coach's perspective, being in meetings with him, and then being in camp when he got called up, to be the head man. And I was just kind of like, wow, college coaches are crazy good, but it turns out like Coach Day is like the best of the best, And so, yeah, being in quarterback meetings with him, I know Justin says it, and I agree that he has to be the best quarterback coach in the country, college wise. And I'm sure pros, but just how much he can take fundamentals and scheme and put them together and differ from guy to guy, to work a scheme around them. Our offense was obviously very different with Dwayne than it was with Justin, and I'm sure it will be different this coming year. But just he just knows so much about everything, and then he'd go off on tangents in the middle of quarterback meetings where he'd just start telling us some historical fact about just the history of football, and it's like, wow, like this is interesting stuff. Like this guy knows, and so he's a great guy to have in the room, and he's still in a lot of the quarterback meeting rooms, he takes pride in that. But I definitely, I didn't know any better that he was going to be the head coach, and I was just like, like, it's cool. Like my position coach is the head coach, but turns out like he's the perfect guy for the job.
That quarterback position is obviously a pretty unique one where, you can rotate 6 wide receivers or multiple running backs through, like there's only one quarterback at a time. Mm-hmm. And, that's obviously going to be a big story this year with CJ, Jack, and Kyle competing for the starting job. Those are all obviously very super competitive guys who probably all think like, I should be the guy. Like all 3 of them probably right now is like, I should be the starting quarterback this fall. Mm-hmm. So how does the coaching staff keep things relatively friendly and keep relationships healthy in that room and not have, crazy division and, everyone kind of doing the in it for themselves kind of thing? How do they keep that balance in there?
Well, I think the first thing that makes it very easy for the coaches is that we recruit really good kids, and we're not going to bring someone in who's going to, butt heads in the quarterback room. I don't care how talented you are. Like I never had that experience where there was like animosity in the quarterback room. And so in my experience, it was always that, yes, you want really competitive quarterbacks, but it's like the guy who's going out there, like everybody trusts that that's the best guy to send out on the field to win a game on Saturday. And you want the competitive guys because obviously competition breeds excellence. Like it's gonna challenge the starter more if the backup's doing really well. And so I think, and I know a lot of places, because we had guys like Gunnar Hoke and Chris Chugunov transfer in, and they're like, man, like at the place I was at, like it was not like this. Like, there are quarterbacks who are out to get each other, at other universities, and it's like, that's not going to be good for the team in the long run. And so it was really easy to to get along with everybody in the quarterback room. And it's also really easy when your starting quarterback is a very likable guy by the team, easy guy to root for. Yeah, in my experience at Ohio State, the players are just such good people that, they're going to work really hard, but they're not going to really have many complaints about who the coaches are sending out on Saturdays. Obviously they think that, they want their shot, but yeah, I never really had that vibe from Ohio State.
With the one-time transfer exception coming this summer, I think a lot of people are saying, like, okay, as soon as spring ball ends, like, it may just be like a crazy, like, shuffling of people all around the country. Like, if I'm not going to be the starter, I'm going somewhere else. And that's probably true. It's going to be true at least some positions at probably just about all 130 FBS schools. So you had a front row seat to a situation that might be a little bit like what could be coming in the next couple months all across college football. That was after Dwayne left at the end of 2018. There were probably a few guys in that room that thought they were going to be the next man up. And then here comes this kid from Georgia, Justin Fields. And, with the transfer portal becoming more of a part of college football at that point, like that was when it was just starting, you had Justin coming in, Tate Martell, Matthew Baldwin, both transfer out. The room like almost completely turned over in the span of 6 months. Like, how do you keep, first of all, how disruptive was that to just sort of the flow of things in there, and having, going into that season where it was like, oh yeah, there are no scholarship quarterbacks who were here at the bowl game last year. Like, how difficult was that? How difficult of an adjustment or transition was that in that room?
Yeah, that was very interesting, because there was a time for actually the past 2 years, I was the oldest guy in the quarterback room in terms of who had been at Ohio State the longest. And so when Justin came in, we had a new quarterback coach, Coach Yursich. And then, so there's a lot of turnover, like even more than that. And so it was like so many meetings, everybody's on the same page. We're all meeting together. And I will say this, that I think the transfer portal is an excellent device for college football, primarily because if coaches are allowed to leave whenever they want, players should also be allowed to leave, because a lot of players get screwed and get stuck under, a coach who didn't recruit them, and they're not going to play them, and so I think that's very beneficial for players. And it's also very appealing to my generation, because we all want instant gratification, and we're going to, think that the grass is always greener on the other side, which unfortunately it's not always that way, especially when you're at a place like Ohio State. But this summer is going to be insane. And it was pretty crazy in the spring, right? I mean, you had guys like Jack Cohn, big name guys, all in the portal. And some of them even got bumped down to like, FCS schools, because there's not that many spots. And I know it as well as anyone, because a lot of people were telling me, hey, man, if you're graduating, like, you might as well like hit up the portal. I'm like, yeah, I don't think anywhere's going to like fulfill me like Ohio State did. And so I would not be surprised if the entire Big Ten is just, rotating door, as with a lot of conferences. But I do know the guys in the quarterback room at Ohio State, and I don't think that's going to be a problem. And everybody, is rooting for each other. Everybody gets along. But there does come a time where, guys are going to look out for their best interests. If they don't think they're going to play, then obviously, you can't really blame them. But there is something to be said with guys who, stick it out. And, you always see that every year. There's like that fifth-year kid who's stuck with the program and, has a really good year. Guys like Kyle Trask, I think, comes to mind. But yeah, I think this summer will be insane after spring ball hits.
Yeah, that's this summer's insanity. Last fall had its own kind of insanity. I mean, how different was that kind of season? I mean, I remember talking to Kerry Combs at one point during, one of the midweek interviews, and he said, like, I don't think I have anything left inside my head. I think they have scraped it all out with Q-tips over the last, 150 days or whatever it was. I mean, how challenging was that just mentally to have to go through that every day and to kind of be locked down, and, the daily COVID testing, the uncertainty whether you were actually going to get to play a game every weekend? How difficult was that just from a mental perspective for everyone in that building to get through that season?
Oh, man. Well, it all started, I guess, exactly pretty much a year like today, right? We were on spring break and everything got shut down. And even starting then, we're doing at-home workouts on your own, using that team builder, and checking it off. You FaceTime your strength coach once a week. Make sure you're doing all right. Checking your weight. But they were really good with that, and not trying to overload us, knowing guys have different situations at home. And then once we got back here and we started COVID testing, it was like, oh, like I got a COVID test at 6 a.m. and I don't work out till 9. Like I'm already awake. I'm losing sleep. It's little things like that build up over time. And then there's the situation of, contact tracing and getting quarantined. So I got quarantined twice and I didn't even have it. And so I'm just sitting there in my room for 10 days, 14 days, and, I'm not able to practice, do anything. And so many guys were in that boat at some point last year. It was like, who do we have this week? It's like, who are we missing? And going back to that, I think that's another place where like the walk-on experience is unique, because like week by week, like the walk-ons would not know like whether like, oh, like I might play this week. Like I'll probably play this week because, COVID, whatnot. But it was the most mentally exhausting year of my life. I'm sure for everybody at the Woody, they felt that way. Pray to God we don't have another year like it. But yeah, I think Coach Combs hit it on the head. Yeah, I mean, your brain just feels empty, and then you're like, I can't believe like we're playing football games right now too. It's like, and we're winning. Like that's the other thing. It's like we're winning games. It's insane. But yeah, man, I mean, I'm sure there'll be a 30 for 30 on it some year, and we'll look back and remember what it was like. But yeah, definitely exhausting.
How different was it on the sidelines during the games? I mean, every time we talked to Ryan, it was like, hey, we got to bring our own energy. We got to be, I mean, like, how different was that on the sideline, both in terms of just like, hey, like, it's real quiet in here, and the piped in noise is like very obviously artificial and not fooling anyone. And, how different was that? And like, how different was it, like, in terms of you guys just having to like really like bring, you had to bring the party?
Yeah. I mean, definitely hit the nail on the head. You had to bring your own energy on the sidelines. My immediate memory to that is the Indiana game. It's like we were in control of the game for the most part, and it was like one of those things where like, let's just run the ball and the game. We got it. And I'm thinking like, man, if we had fans here, like this would be over. And the next thing I know, I'm looking up. I'm like, if Indiana scores here, they're going to go for 2. Like we could lose this game. And I just remember that I'm like looking around. I'm like, is that nobody else stressed? Because like the shoe would be going insane. And so that was just weird. And then the national title game, like on the sideline, and we had 18,000 fans, something like that.
Yeah, 15, 18, something like that. Yeah.
And I'm like, this is like every kid's dream to like be playing in the national title game. I'm looking around. I'm like, it's cool. It's like, it's loud, whatever. But I'm like, it's not a packed house, it's not packed Hard Rock. But yeah, definitely the energy levels weren't there in times when, momentum swings would be a factor for home games. But I mean, our guys did a great job of, motivating themselves, and don't really need that too much. But it obviously, I mean, we miss the fans like crazy. So.
We got a real honest glimpse inside the Woody, just this like very brief moment. I think it was the Tuesday before what was supposed to be the Michigan game. We're in the middle of player interviews. Justin Hilliard's up there answering questions, and everyone's phone starts blowing up. Michigan has announced they can't play this Saturday. And so like we were sitting there, and we saw right in the middle of the interview, we saw Justin Hilliard find out that there is no Michigan game this year. This is your 6th year. Like, you're not going to get to play Michigan. It was this really like powerful emotional moment. Like he's like, you're kidding, right? Like that. No. And then, they shut it down pretty quickly, and kind of, let you guys find out in your own way, instead of from jerks like us. So like, what was it like inside that building when you found out, yeah, there wasn't a Maryland game. Yeah, there wasn't an Illinois game, but there is not going to be a Michigan game this year. Like, what was that like inside that building when you found that out? And then how did you guys kind of pull yourselves together emotionally to go play Northwestern the next week?
Right. It was definitely an eerie feeling because, Justin is probably the best example or the best face you could have up there when that hits because, he is the epitome of Ohio State football, 6-year guy. Like, that was his 6th pair of gold pants, all he wanted to do was play that game. And, you have guys all throughout the building who feel that way. That's all we do. And it was eerie because, we see the stuff. Guys are on social media. They're like, we might not play, who knows? But we're still practicing. And then this is the game. This is like what America looks forward to in a time like this. And it was, and then on top of that, you had us worried that, and they might not let us in the Big Ten championship game, like, oh, geez, like that would suck. And then, but it was just dead silence. I remember we had the meeting and like we just go home and like we're just sitting on our couch like, well, what now? Like, I pray that they let us in the game. Like, we know how good we are. And that too is that we were very much looking forward to putting 70 on them this year. And man, that would have been a beatdown. But it was, it's a weird feeling. If the season would have ended like that, that would have been miserable. Thankfully it did not. But yeah, I think Justin's reaction to that is pretty spot on. Yeah, shock, definitely.
You mentioned Justin with 6 pairs of gold pants. You have 2. You probably would have gotten a 3rd last year, but didn't get a chance. You have 3 Big Ten championship rings, part of a Rose Bowl team, 2 teams that made the college football playoff. That's not bad. So do you have a favorite memory from your time on the team, either personally or just like the game or the moment in a game that was like, yeah, this is the coolest thing ever?
Yeah. I think strangely, it's a time where I wasn't on the field. And this was the Clemson game this year. Obviously beating Clemson was just the most satisfying emotion I've ever experienced. Exhilarating. But so I was in quarantine like right after the Big Ten championship game. COVID finally got me. And so I did my quarantine, everything got clean. But so I couldn't practice or anything or travel with the team. But I was out of quarantine. And so I was like, hey, like, can I just drive down to the game? Like, this is like the game. Like, this is what I've been waiting for all year, And so, yeah, I did it. And I was able to use my tickets and I was there. And I remember like just after the game, man, the guy's going crazy and like running up to the fence and, dapping everybody up. And I remember that because I'm like, oh, I would kill to be on the field for that moment. But like being in the stands for that definitely provided a different feel to it because, I could feel not how much the game meant to just the team, but to the whole state of Ohio and all the fans. A huge game. Obviously everything leading up to it, all the interviews, whatnot. But that was, I can only imagine what it would have been like if I was on the sideline, but that was very, very satisfying. Yeah.
Yeah. That was a year. It sounded like that was like a year build up to that from just watching you guys walk out of the stadium in Arizona. It was just like, it feels like this is going to come back in a year. And it did. Was that just kind of like, I know Michigan is kind of the everyday focus there, but it seems like Clemson last year might have been a little bit like, you kind of had one eye on Clemson a lot of the year.
Yeah, definitely. The focus is always on Team Up North, but all the guys, love the competition that Clemson brings. And obviously the coaches feel it too, because it's the recruiting battle, constantly going on. And so that was definitely a big focus for us. We knew it was going to come, and it was just poetic justice the way everything worked out. And we were so prepared for that. But yeah, it definitely felt like, we're going the whole season. You're watching Clemson's game, seeing how they're doing. You're like, we're going to play them. Like, it'll work out. We'll get our shot, and it did. But yeah, that was definitely a huge focus off season, whether it was watching the Clemson game back, seeing what we did wrong. Had a lot of opportunities to win that game 2 years ago. But yeah, that was definitely a big focus for us.
So no more Ohio State football. So what is next for you?
So my end goal is I want to be a high school English teacher and coach high school football. They couldn't quite suck me into the college coaching gig, but so I got to get my teaching licensure in the next 2 years and get started on that. And then I have some exciting stuff coming soon, but I can't really talk about it because nothing's confirmed yet. But I'm sure we'll get a hold of it here soon. But I'm very excited for the near future. But yeah, it's been about that. It's been different not having college football around for a little bit, but trying to get used to a life outside of it. Yeah,
Got a little more free time, I would imagine.
that's right. Yeah, just a little bit. So I mean, I'm still when I work out. I mean, I'm still pretty much doing Ohio State workouts just from memory. Funny stuff like that. And I just texted our strength coach Nico Palizzetti the other day and told him that I had a nightmare that I was late for a workout and Coach Mick was on me for it. And I'm not even kidding you. I've had that nightmare like 6 out of the past 7 nights. And he said it's not going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm sure I'll be dealing with a little PTSD on that for a while.
Those Mickey Marotti workouts stick with you.
Yeah.
Well, really appreciate you taking the time to join us and share some stories from the last few years. It has been quite a memorable era of Ohio State football, and you got to be got a front row seat for all of it. So that had to be pretty cool.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right. And make sure you check out Buckeye Scoop for full coverage of today's first spring practice, as well as the NCAA tournament and a whole bunch more. You can find that all at buckeyescoop.com. Also, make sure you check out all of our great podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, Spreaker, you name it. It's there. Just search Buckeye Scoop to find all of those. You can subscribe right there. Also, leave us a 5-star rating and review. That helps other folks find these shows as well. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the football and the basketball. We will talk to you on Monday.